Welcome, everybody, to the first edition of the Fire Marshal Files. I'm Josh Owens, Deputy Fire Marshal with the City of Lexington, and I'm going to be your host for today. So with this podcast, we want to share some fire safety tips, stories, insights, and videos with you throughout this series that are dedicated to keeping you, your family, and your community safe. In today's episode, we're going to look at understanding fire safety and some basic fire safety tips. And this is a critical first step in preventing fires and protecting what matters most. So let's dive right into it. Question we get asked often is, what is fire safety and why is that so important to us? Well, fire safety is about preventing fires before they start and knowing how to respond if a fire occurs. But why is this important? Because a lot of people say, fires have never happened to me, they've never happened to my family, why do I need to worry about it? Well, unfortunately, across the U.S., there's over 350 home fires a year. And tragically, those fires result in thousands of injuries and deaths and billions of dollars in property damage. But there is some good news with it. The vast majority of these fires can be prevented, and that's what we're here to do today. Fire safety begins with awareness, and we want to share these tips with you to help prevent those fires from happening. So let's look at some common causes of fires and understanding those risks and how we can prevent them. The number one cause of home fires and home fire injuries are cooking fires. They also result in the number two cause of deaths among home fires. Oftentimes, that can be the result of unattended cooking or items being left too close to the stove. So how do we prevent these fires? Well, first and foremost, stay in the kitchen when you're cooking. A saying that we hear often is keep an eye on what you fry. If you're cooking, stay there. If you feel you need to leave the room, turn the stove off. Obviously, it's going to take longer to cook, but we'd rather you be safe, have a home to come back to, than to leave and go to another room and come back and your kitchen be on fire. So always stay in the kitchen when you're cooking. Keep flammables away from the stove. Keep them away from the burners. A good idea is to have a 3-foot circle of safety. That's not only around the stove, but also out in front of it. Oftentimes, we'll have kids and pets come into the kitchen. Establish a buffer with them. If you have kids, bring them into the kitchen and show them, look, we don't want to be any closer than this, okay? Also, have a lid nearby when we're cooking. If you do have a grease fire, use that lid to extinguish the fire. Never use water to extinguish a grease fire. If you do have a fire, take the lid, carefully slide it onto the pot, turn the heat off. Give that time to cool off, move it away from the eye, and allow it to continue to cool before you take that heat off. Fire needs 3 things: heat, fuel, and oxygen. If we take away the oxygen in the heat source, that fire will be extinguished. Next, let's take a look at the number 2 leading cause of home fires. That's also the third leading cause of home fire deaths, and that's heating fires. Space heaters and fireplaces often result in heating fires, especially in the colder months. But we can prevent those. Again, we want to remember a 3-foot circle of safety. So if you're using space heaters, keep them in the middle of the floor, keep clearance around them. If you have fireplaces, same thing. Don't allow things to get too close to the fireplace. But also with fireplaces, even if you're using gas or electric fireplaces, have a screen in front of them. Don't simply have an open fireplace where somebody could put something in it, pets could run in there, kids could stick something in it. Or if you're using those real fireplaces, you don't have to worry about the logs rolling out onto your floor. With your space heaters, make sure we're plugging them directly into an outlet. Never, ever plug a space heater into an extension cord or a surge protector. Sadly, we have many fires every year because people want to use the extension cords for their space heaters. These overload the extension cords and even the surge protectors, and we get several fires a year because of this. When you leave the room or even go to bed at night, make sure you're turning that heater off. Never leave these space heaters unattended. We have a lot of fires that result because of unattended heaters or fireplaces, so make sure we're extinguishing those fires or turning those heaters off every night. Next, let's take a look at electrical fires. Think about overloaded outlets, damaged cords, or faulty wirings. A lot of these are causes of electrical fires. So we want to make sure we're inspecting these cords regularly on all our items, our lamps, our appliances, even our extension cords that we're using. Make sure that they're not damaged, they're not frayed, we're not seeing wear and tear to those. If we do, we want to replace those items or those cords immediately. With extension cords, be careful, especially when we're setting up holiday displays, about running them through windows and doors. Oftentimes these pinch on the cords, and we get a lot of damage. You may not be able to see it, but it's damaging internally, and we get a lot of fires as a result of this. The best thing to use is surge protectors because they have that internal mechanism that kicks off when they're overloaded. but oftentimes even these can fail. So be cautious about what you're plugging into them and be cautious about overloading these outlets. Another common cause of fire is smoking materials, such as cigarettes or cigars. Sadly, this is the #1 cause of home fire deaths across the country. Cigarettes not properly extinguished or smoking while in bed or on oxygen causes a lot of fires. So we want to make sure that if you do smoke, it's best to go outside. If you do smoke in your home, make sure you're not in bed. If you're starting to feel sleepy, go ahead and extinguish that cigarette and never, ever smoke with oxygen. Again, fire needs oxygen to burn. We get a lot of fires because people smoke while they're on oxygen. When you extinguish those smoking materials, such as your cigarettes or cigars, make sure we're using an ashtray, they're fully extinguished, or even use water to do so. But always make sure that they're fully extinguished before you leave them. Finally, let's take a look at candles. While candles look pretty and they smell good, they can often cause fires if they're left unattended or placed too close to flammable materials. If you're going to use candles, stay in the room. Don't leave a candle lit and go to another room. Again, I understand they smell good, but oftentimes what happens is these get knocked off. A pet may come along, knock the candle over. Now we have a fire. So make sure if you're not in that room, blow the candle out. Make sure you also keep that clearance around them. Again, remember 3-foot circle of safety. Don't leave them too close to drapes or any other items. So now that we've talked about these fire safety tips, let's talk about some important things we can do to help us stay safe if there is a fire. First, we're going to take a look at fire extinguishers. It's a good idea to have a fire extinguisher in your home. Oftentimes we have these in the kitchen or even in the garage. But just having an extinguisher is not important. Knowing how to use one is vital. Always remember the acronym PASS. Pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. You want to pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep side to side. The reason we aim at the base of that fire is we want to put out what is burning, taking away that heat and that oxygen. Regularly check your fire extinguishers. If you have a one-time use extinguisher, make sure that they're stayed in a cool, dry place. We don't want a lot of moisture getting to them. But once a month, give them a shake to make sure that powder stays broken up. We don't want it getting compacted. If you have an extinguisher that can be recharged, keep an eye on that gauge. Make sure it's in the green. It's a good idea, too, to go to have a fire extinguisher company service that extinguisher once a year. Next, smoke alarms. Smoke alarms are vital for early notification in the event of a fire. It's important to have a smoke alarm in every bedroom, one outside every bedroom, and on each level of the home. But it's not only important to have a smoke alarm, we also want to make sure they work. Once a month, we need to test that smoke alarm. Mash the test button on that alarm, and you should hear 3 long, loud, slow beeps. If you don't hear those beeps when you mash the test button, or if your smoke alarm chirps, change the batteries. If after changing the batteries they still don't work, then it's a good idea to go ahead and change the alarm. Once a month, again, we want to mash that test button, make sure the smoke alarm works. If you're using battery-powered smoke alarms that have replaceable batteries, it's a good idea to change those batteries twice a year. We recommend when the time changes. Even if the batteries are still good, go ahead and change them. Then you don't have to worry about it. They will always be working. And then every 10 years, replace your smoke alarms. Smoke alarms have a shelf life just like everything else. So at 10 years, go ahead and replace it. If you're not sure, on the back of your alarm, there should be a date of manufacture. 10 years from that date, go ahead and change the alarm. If you're not sure, go ahead and change it. Finally, let's talk about an escape plan. So knowing these fire safety causes, having ways to identify fires is important, but what happens when that fire occurs? We need to know how to get out. First, we want to have 2 ways out of every room, and then establish a meeting spot outside for everybody to go to. We don't want people running out the front door, running out the back door, but having no accountability if everybody got out. So have that escape plan, have 2 ways out of every home, have your meeting place, but practice your escape plan. We recommend at least twice a year, but it's not a bad idea to practice it more often. A good rule of thumb is when you test your smoke alarms, go ahead and practice your fire drill, especially if you have young kids. When you test that alarm, let them hear it the first few times so that they're aware of what it sounds like, and then tell them, all right, we're going to practice our plan. This time we're going to go out the front door. But as it progresses, test it without letting them know, and see how they react. If they don't get out, have that conversation. Listen, when the smoke alarm sounds, we need to get out of the house. We need to go to our meeting spot. So what do we do if a fire does occur? First and foremost, stay calm. We want to act quickly, but we want to be calm when that fire happens. Remember, follow your escape plan. Follow one of your ways out of the home. Go to your meeting spot. Once you're there, call 911. Give them your address, tell them your name and your phone number and what type of emergency you have. But most importantly, never go back in the home. Get out and stay out. Once everybody is at that meeting place, you can have accountability. When the fire department shows up, you can let them know we have everybody or we're missing somebody. Tell them the last place that you knew for them to be at. Remember, our smoke alarms are early notification in the event of a fire. So if you don't have one, make sure you get those installed as soon as possible. Many local fire departments will provide smoke alarms free of charge. If you're a resident of the City of Lexington here in North Carolina, we do provide those for free. We just need to install them. If you don't have smoke alarms in your home and you need them, or if you're not sure if your smoke alarms are too old, give our fire marshal's office a call at 336-248-3933. Leave us a message, and we'll contact you back to schedule a time to install those alarms for you. Again, those are a vital part of your safety plan and helping you get out in the event of a fire. So that's all for today's first episode of the Fire Marshal Files. Remember, fire safety starts with you. Take a few minutes today, check your smoke alarms, go over your fire safety plan. If you don't have that safety plan, go ahead and develop it, practice it with your family members. As always, we want you to stay safe. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.